and boom goes the dynamite.
That's right. Boom goes the dynamite, and we're live here on the Daily Dive, the only live Monday through Friday lacrosse talk show here. I am Michael Karvelis in for Renee Washington, who we will see back tomorrow. She's been holding it down awesomely, and we hope to see her again. We will see her again tomorrow. We want to remind you that our show is presented by Daily Dive Store, found on the link tree in our social media bios. Beanies, hoodies, you name it. It's cold wherever you are. Even in South Georgia, it's a little bit chilly. I wouldn't mind having a beanie or a hoodie. So go there, support the only Monday through Friday live lacrosse talk show here. Our top story is presented by the Daily Dive Store. And we're going to start off with the Buffalo Bandits star, Josh Byrne, being named NLL Player of the Week. Now remember, Josh Byrne was already one of our 3 stars of the weekend. I believe it was yesterday on the show that we unveiled that. Josh Byrne with a 12-point performance and was amazing in the Buffalo Bandits win against the Thunderbirds. I personally did not know that Josh and even Dane Smith were going to have a bunch of points in that game, but Halifax's team is for real, as we'll get to here very shortly. A little bit of a teaser there. But I wanted to ask a question here because Dane Smith is 30, Josh Byrne is 28, and Dane Smith is the reigning league MVP. But as you remember, when LaxMag did a players poll, Dane Smith, I believe, was second or third on that list of best players in the National Lacrosse League. A rookie or second-year player now, Jeff Teat, was number 1. And I have to wonder, even though Dane Smith, 135-point season, fantastic job, Bandits were so close to the NLL Finals. But I have to wonder if even players like myself take into account that he does play with Josh Byrne. Dehogan Anacoke is a very underrated second-year player who I believe was absolutely snubbed from that top 100, well, at least was in the top 100. But it's interesting to me that even the players, I know like number 3 is still incredible, but let's be real. Josh Byrne at a 12-point performance was more than what Dane Smith had, and I'm not trying to create some animosity between the two, but I believe they have their own podcast together with the Buffalo Bandits. So it's definitely interesting. And as Renee mentioned yesterday on the show, we were talking about Josh's performance was, hey, it's not a bad problem to have, but I do wonder if does that take away from the value? It's like you look at the NBA with Joel Embiid going bonkers with like a bunch of 40, 15 rebound games. And I wonder if players realize, well, you're playing with James Harden, you're playing with Tyrese Maxey. Like, what about with the Nets? Like, Kevin Durant's playing really well, but when Kyrie's there, you play with Kyrie Irving. Like, that matters. It matters to conversations around the league and even from fans. Like, you're a great player. No one's taking that away from you. But when Josh Byrne scores more points than Dane Smith, I'm just saying. So, shout out to Josh Byrne for being named NLL Player of the Week, and I'm glad that we got him as one of our 3 stars. I feel like I would have snubbed him if we did not have him there. Let's get into this, though. This is a very interesting thing that came out. A friend of the show, Cooper Perkins, as we know, runs the lacrosse metrics page. He also does some work for IL Indoor. And if you look right here, a new nice article came out for him. A new By the Metrics, it's called. And it shows the Vancouver Warriors might be the worst team in the NLL. And this graphic I'm showing right here is the goals over under expectations. So basically take a bunch of analytics stuff, and I'm not going to break it down like the whole description of it, but it's basically like you have the normal power rankings, and this thing, like, just based on stats alone, it's not biased. It just says as good as certain teams are, can they be better? At the end of the article, Cooper Perkins even mentions it's just for fun. It's just to break it down because it doesn't matter on the field anyways. But let's be real. Let's look at this list here for a minute. Halifax, to me, I sing their praises, man. Now, let me lie. At first, I did say that Halifax had, played Georgia, they played Philadelphia, scored a bunch of goals. Then they played Matt Vince in Buffalo and scored 13 puppies in Buffalo. So I'm not surprised to see them right here at the top at 10, almost 11 goals over expectations. Like, that's insane. Doesn't mean maybe they're not as good as we'd like to think, and maybe they will fall off, or does it mean that this is a group of guys that no one was taking seriously? And then you scroll down the list, you got number 8 is the Rush. Now, I did mention I was not happy. I was not happy with the way the Rush played Panther City. I know there was a long layoff, and I think Cody Jansen, another friend of the show, the Rush play-by-play guy, he did mention that maybe the layoff hurt them. But plus 1.34, not going to cut it, man. I think analytics have a place in sports. I'm not going to be one of those nerds on the couch like, oh, yeah, these guys are pretty good. No, I think these things, like when you have something like this, there's not many of these in lacrosse, period. So the fact you have the Rush only at number 8, and Cooper Perkins is one of the only guys that does this analytics thing, it shows in my skepticism after the Panther City game might be warranted. Now, a team that I've crucified on the show, well, as much as I can as a producer, not the host, Vancouver Warriors are -15. It's not just like bad, it's almost double the Rock. For reference, the Las Vegas Desert Dogs might have a historically bad offense as an expansion team. Try 12 goals below that is the Vancouver Warriors. That's a problem. I know it's only 3 games in for a lot of teams, but we got these Warriors going to stay up. You got Keegan Ball, who is ranked the most underrated player. And for what? Vancouver got pretty much blasted by Calgary the 2 games they played. I thought Vancouver's only shot in the first game they played was rough it up and have a game with 47 penalty minutes, man. Come on now. Vancouver, that's a bad stat, but it's not the only stat out there. And it's only, like I said, 3 games in. And so we'll see how that works from here on out. But when I come back, we're going to start getting into our guest. We got Jamie Shewchuk, the Colorado Mammoth analyst. Mammoth had a slow start in game 1 and then beat Panther City. The defending champs also have added Reese Dutch. We'll talk to Jamie about that when we come back. You're watching the Daily Dive. Don't go anywhere. We're just diving in. We're right back. Welcome back to the Daily Dive here once again. I'm Michael Karvelis, filling in for our awesome host, Renee Washington, who will be back tomorrow. And I'm sure would have loved the guest on today's show. And one of them is joining us now is current Mammoth analyst and former Mammoth player, Jamie Shewchuk. Jamie, how are you, sir? Welcome to the Daily Dive.
I'm doing great, man. Happy New Year. Excited to be on the show. Thanks a lot for having me.
No, thank you for making time for us. And you're right, it is a new year. maybe that means more things for the Mammoth. We'll have to see. But let's jump right into those Colorado Mammoth, or Canadians like to say Colorado. The defending champs are the Mammoth, obviously, and game one, they let's be honest, they flat out got blasted by the Saskatchewan Rush. The addition of Reese Dutch later on then obviously helped as the team then was able to hold off Panther City. So how did Colorado turn around? Was it just adding Reese Dutch? What had to go right after what kind of went wrong in game number one to you?
Yeah, I think great question. I think anytime you can call it the championship hangover kind of thing. These guys, you're missing Ryan Lee still. Eli McLaughlin's back in the lineup, but I know they had a good training camp. I remember talking to a few of the boys, and they're pleased where they were. Definitely didn't expect what happened in game one there. I watched the game myself live, and I was just almost chuckling because it's one of those things and I'm sure head coach Pat Coyle said, same thing I was thinking was, guys, we got to write that one off and be better. So I think that's the kind of way you got to look at it. I think they also came, Saskatchewan's got something to prove this year. 100%, Jimmy Quinlan, taking over the reins there, and he's been a stagnant with that organization, I think, since from day one when they were in Edmonton. So good to see him there. I know he's going to have those guys motivated. So I think that was another factor too. Saskatchewan was just dialed in, and they, I'll steal a Tyler Pace quote here, blew the doors off of them, in game one there at home. But I think, I talked to Dylan Ward. I talked to a couple of guys on the team, and, that's what it is. It's like, wow, boys, we were bad, but this is a veteran team. And, clearly you saw they ended up having a week off there, and then they were back playing against Panther City. And you could just tell, just watching that game that they're back to that championship, that veteran presence. And, I think it's one of those things they didn't panic. It's game one. They knew they were bad. So it's good to see them come back and against a very, very impressive Panther City team these last couple seasons.
Yeah, Panther City's been kind of grimy, I noticed, because they played the Rush, and apparently Rush wasn't who I thought they were, as I mentioned in the last segment, maybe. Really quick, back to that second game. Well, back to the first game, really, and I hate to harp on it, but you mentioned that you were chuckling, because I'm sure a lot of people were like, these guys just won the championship. But then you see in the Rush, when they played Panther City last week, it's like maybe the long layoff for a sport that has guys who do have regular jobs and do have other things to do besides play NLL. How much do you think that played into it? And you think it's, I guess, easier in the NLL to just, okay, that sucked, but let's go get it next time?
Yeah, I think it's one of the NLL is such a unique league. The fact that, like you mentioned, guys have other jobs, and it's such a grind. If there's one thing, I definitely miss the game, being involved in the locker room, but I do not miss the travel and what these guys go through. And flying from Victoria, and you're flying, across. There's no direct flights, so there's a lot of variables that go into it, and every team deals with it. So I think everybody, they look at, Calgary didn't have half their bags last Friday, and we're barely able to practice, and guys, so it's like those are factors a lot of fans don't really see, and so I think though, you don't want to make excuses. So I've never been on either side of a, if you get a week off, does it affect you or does it not? I think just the nature of the NLL, these guys are so mentally strong,
Right.
going through the travel and, what they need to do during the week to take care of their bodies and take care of their families at home or whatever their other responsibilities. So, I've never really got into the whole layoff thing being an advantage or disadvantage. I think it's a level playing field. And like, again, these guys are so mentally tough, playing this game now. So I don't really think it's a huge factor. If anything, for the Mammoth, they're able to just hit the reset button, and they're so calm. I've been around Robert Hope, and his presence there is just he is a true leader and a true captain, and he's got that calm, and head coach Pat Coyle's like that. Same kind of thing. He's going to hammer you when needed, but he has faith and ultimate trust in those guys.
I love that. I love that you love the mental toughness, because I think that's a thing that goes kind of over people's heads when talking about athletes, but these guys are obviously really good athletes, and mental toughness is part of the athletic thing. So let's get to Reese Dutch now. When they added him, some people may view it as like, oh my gosh, they're panicking, but really, they're just kind of like, piling on to what's already a good team here.
Yeah.
Like, it helps. Obviously, the offense was not great in game one, but that could also be like just the long season layoff. So, what do you think Reese Dutch does for the Mammoth immediately and long term, really, as well?
Yeah, if you look at the Mammoth offense last year when they were rolling, when everybody was still healthy, and unfortunately we saw Ryan Lee go down in the playoffs, and then Eli McLaughlin go down there in the final series. So their two biggest point producers, and Ryan Lee was having one of the best seasons I've ever seen a player have in this league since I've been watching last year. So it's really a bummer. They definitely missed him, but the way they rebounded and were able to figure it out and end up beating Buffalo, which obviously is not an easy task. It was really impressive there. So yeah, Ryan Lee, I don't think he's going to be ready. Maybe February, March, what I'm hearing. So they needed, what I found watching game one, they were missing that off-ball feeder on the right side. Just the way Zed Williams plays and just kind of the dynamic. They're definitely missing that feeder. So I played with Reese Dutch. My game was not a give me the ball, I'm going to run around a guy. I was better off ball, and I love playing with Reese because he's always looking for the lefties. And so I think that's something that Reese Dutch. We obviously know he's got 2 championships with 2 different teams. This guy's a warrior, and he's been in the league since '09. It's one of those things where you're getting not only what he does on the floor, and sure there's questions about his injuries, but this guy is I talked to him this morning, and he's telling me his routine today, and I don't even know what it was called. One of those ice chambers he's going in for his body. Like, he's taking care of himself, and he wants to play. And he said when I called him after he got signed, I was really excited that he's finally coming to Colorado, and we're going to meet up and all that stuff. And that's one thing he said. He's like, I want to go out on my terms. Like, I got hurt and stuff, but I still think I'm capable. And of course, he's in a practice there. He was able to have a couple practices on the bye week, and he said he wasn't putting on pressure to go win the first 10 minutes of practice. It was just ease in and get a feel. And he and I both agreed it's you don't lose the scoring touch. I'm confident I can still go score goals. I just can't keep up anymore, and that's one thing that So Reese has to figure that out. And I asked him. He's been on 2 championship teams. What was it like going to the Mammoth locker room and that chant? And he said you could tell why they won, and
wow.
just how close knit they are. Like, it truly does feel like a family. And going back to the head coach Pat Coyle, he's all about that, and Robert Hope. It trickles down, so you get that vibe. And so Reese said he's welcomed, and of course. But again, not only what he does on the field, it's what he does off the field. This is presence. He's going to outwork anybody in the gym. He's going to outwork anybody throughout the week to prepare. And he's a winner. He wants to win. He's highly competitive, and so I'm excited to see him. He's definitely done some damage against the Mammoth in Ball Arena, so this is his first home game. I'm sure he's excited to put on the number 10 with the Mammoth jersey. So I'm looking forward to seeing him play in Ball Arena. I think he's going to have a big game.
I'm sure we all are. And you're right, chemistry does matter, that team locker room feel. And I love that you mentioned he wanted to go out on his own terms. Allie's got a lot of pride. They have a lot of pride, and sometimes that's the extra push that they need to maybe take a team like the Mammoth over the top again. This weekend, there was a long holiday break. We know that. And tell us the formula for Colorado Mammoth to beat the Calgary Roughnecks, who look pretty good with a good goal minder and some nice pieces on that side. Tell me what's the perfect formula for what's going to happen if the Mammoth are going to win this game.
Yeah, there's no doubt that this matchup is amplified. I think anytime Colorado is hosting Calgary, there's a little bit more intensity level. I know going back to our days in the playoffs, they had our number for sure. So it's always a battle, and everybody loves coming to Ball Arena to play lacrosse, whether you're a visitor or you're the home team. So I think it's magnified. Calgary had a tough loss last Friday against San Diego. I watched that game, and listening to head coach Miloski after, just kind of break down the game, you can just tell they're going to be ready to go, and they're so well prepared. Coach Milwaukee has that team very well prepared, and they're a new team, right? Reese Dutch was there in 19. You got Dane Dobie's gone, Curtis Dixon's gone. So they're a young team, fast, well coached, and of course, I think what's going to come down to is the goaltender matchup between these two teams. Now, to answer your question, what's the game plan for Colorado? I mean, they just need to stick to what they do. I think when they're rolling, and you can see the confidence in the back end when Dylan Ward's playing and Joey Capito's breaking down that far end, and you get the transition involved. And I think the key is the goalies are going to do what the goalies do, but I think the offense, both offenses need to get inside and really test both of these goaltenders as much as they can. But it's going to be a fast, physical, hard-hitting, maybe high scoring. I don't know. Again, with these two goaltenders, it might be a low scoring game. But again, I think the key is for the Mammoth offense just to continue that chemistry, keep that ball hot, but get inside and get Del Bianco moving.
That's a great point about goaltenders, and I've noticed on the NLL, that's a good thing. When you start attacking them inside, you start peppering them, as I like to say. It's going to be an interesting game. Also, he said, take the over. I'm kidding. No, thank you, Jamie, for all that you do for lacrosse, and have a fun time watching the Calgary game. And we look to have you on the show again, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. Have a good rest of your day.
All right, you too. All right, everyone. When we come back, one team was lost at the expense of the Colorado Mammoth, and that was the Buffalo Bandits. We're going to talk to an old friend here, Steve Bermel, the Bandits analyst. When we come back, the Daily Dive. Don't go anywhere. We got the beat going here on Daily Dive. Another thing that's going is the Buffalo Bandits the last couple of games. Here to talk about them is their analyst, Steve Bermel, an actual friend of the show, well, a friend of an old show I've done before. Steve, welcome here to the Daily Dive. What's up, man?
Hey, thanks for having me. It's been a while. You've tried to track me down last year and this year, and unfortunately I was traveling. But I'm at work today, taking a little time on the show to talk to you, and it's exciting to be back on the show.
Yes, sir, and good to see you as well. And thank you for doing that. By the way, we love we love when people can take time out of their day to talk to us and just talk about the cross. I love it. Steve,
So good.
Let's get into this because I mentioned the Bandits are kind of bouncing, but they're feeling good. Josh Byrne with a 12-point player of the week performance. How have the Bandits turned around the last two games after being really upset by Albany in game one?
And just to talk about game one, Albany has always kind of been a thorn in Buffalo's side. Even though they beat Albany, I believe all three times they played last year, Albany had the lead in all three games. And Doug Jamieson, 45 saves or something in game one. And Albany's offense, we know they have some absolute assassins on offense. So I wasn't surprised that Albany beat Buffalo, although you would think that, the Bandits coming off the championship run, Albany getting eliminated in the first round of the playoffs by Buffalo. That matchup, for some reason, it's almost like some of these NFL matchups where, the Indy hasn't beaten Jacksonville at home and, forever. Like, it's one of those things where Albany always just seems to be Albany always seems to be a tough out for Buffalo. And obviously some, a big loss up front with Chase Fraser not being for quite some time. GM Steve Dietrich mentioning that it'll probably be February before we see him back, recovering from off-season surgery. So there were some new pieces for sure. Kevin Brunette with him moving on to New York as a free agent, some younger guys coming into play. It might have just been a factor of the Bandits having to get their feet underneath them, and also even the preseason practices had to get moved around due to weather. So before we had the terrible blizzard around Christmas, the open practice that was supposed to be open to the fans in Buffalo, that got moved up to Oakville. So because of me traveling and the way things worked out, the last game was actually my first time around the team this year, just because of the way logistics have worked, because all of their practices getting moved to the track because of the weather down here when they were scheduled to happen. I missed the opener. I was out of town. I watched it back, but I missed it live. So that's just kind of how disjointed the beginning of the season was for Buffalo. So I'm not surprised they're finding a bit of a rhythm now.
Yeah, I was actually shocked it took as much goals it did to beat the Thunderbirds, but man, the Bandits, 18 of them. That helps when you're feeling good at home, right?
Well, for sure. And the number of shorthanded goals they scored, the officials were handing out penalties left and right to Buffalo. And of course, working around the Bandits organization, there's times people can be biased. But one penalty in particular, Steve Priolo has his stick tied up for about 10 seconds. And he's trying to yank it loose from under the guy's armpit. I don't remember who it was. And then Priolo ends up just two hands shoving him in the chest to get him away from him. And Priolo got called for a penalty. Like there was a blatant holding the stick for 10 seconds before. I have zero issue with giving Priolo a penalty because he decked the guy, but there needed to be one both ways. But the Bandits found themselves shorthanded a ton of times, but they had something like 5 shorthanded goals. Byrne had 3 of them. They did find a way to fire on all cylinders on offense. And ultimately, maybe the craziest part is they found a way to cool off Halifax offense. Halifax averaged 19.5 goals a game coming in. They put up a 20 spot and a 19 spot in their first games against Philadelphia and New York. So the Bandits only, quote unquote, giving up 13 was actually cooling off that offense because they've been deadly up to this point this year.
Yeah, and even 13 on the road is still pretty high, I'd say. But like you said, cooling off was 13, I guess, is what that is. Let's now shift gears to the next game. It's the Georgia Swarm, actually a team that I'm 3.5, 4 hours away from. Tell me what the Bandits have to do to beat the Swarm. I believe the Thunderbirds, no, they don't play the Swarm. But anyways, what do the Bandits have to do to beat the Swarm and not avoid an upset at Georgia?
Well, and you talk about an upset. I believe the line is the Bandits are minus 200 to win this game. So they are favored heavily to win this game. But I think ultimately they have to kind of keep it going. I know that sounds so cliche, but they'd be a Friday game against Rochester, right? Rochester 3-0 in first place in the East. They go out to Rochester Friday the 20th. That is actually they have to. That one's probably the one circled. But between now and then, they have to make sure that they're staying focused on what's been working. They have a lot to learn defensively with some of the new guys. They have a lot to learn offensively because now, not only being without Chase Fraser from this offseason surgery, they lost Cloutier long-term too to a thumb injury. That's a big guy on the right side and a big guy on the left side that they're without. So they're going to have to figure out some ways with Vason stepping into the lineup, Robinson stepping into the lineup. They have to keep these guys, if anything, keep bringing them up to speed because they're going to be playing in these quote-unquote bigger games. So for a lot of it, it's going to be just kind of maintaining this momentum they have. They can't take their foot off the gas. You don't want to go into the next couple games disjointed because, as you mentioned, it's going to be together. Now that's 3 in a row. If they put up another good offensive performance, now that's 3 in a row. That's 11 goals. It's 16 goals. And then if they can put up, 14 or 15 again this weekend, all of a sudden it doesn't become a couple of nice games. It becomes who they are. It kind of becomes their identity. So that's important going into the weekend that they can sustain it.
I love it. And you mentioned the Cloutier injury. I think they say a significant amount of time, and I'm wondering if that's like towards the playoffs or after the playoffs. But it's not fun. It's not fun for them.
I don't know the details, but I can tell you that his whole hand is wrapped. I mean,
so bad.
I am not a doctor, and I would only be speculating. But it's not like he doesn't have a little Band-Aid on the tip of his thumb. It's definitely for it to be. I think it had to be repaired, and it's going to need some time to heal back. And so I know the definition is significant now, and that could be because they don't know. It might be just they have to see when he can get his grip strength back. This is me guessing and speculating, but it's going to be some time, and that's a big loss, obviously.
Agreed. So with that in mind, and with dealing with injuries, I guess every team does so, but significant injuries are definitely interesting as well. Tell me, let's say months from now, the Buffalo Bandits have not just made, but this time won the NLL finals. They are the champions. How does that statement become true a few months later whenever we talk?
I think the key was what happened last year against Colorado. For some reason, their offense just went dormant. I mean, when I don't know if we even spoke after the final. So when we were in Denver calling the game,
I don't think we did.
When Buchanan scored that goal off the end boards, it made it 8-6 Buffalo. John Gertler and I are calling the game, and we look at each other and kind of give the look like this might be it. Like they're finding a way to score these goals. You're getting goal scorer, really nice goal from Buchanan. They never scored again. Like the goal by Buchanan on the rebound off the end boards in the third quarter was the last goal they scored that game. And then they come home game 3 and they just couldn't find a way to get scoring. And you know what they need to have happen is when the big guns are being shut down for whatever reason, they need Chase Fraser, Tehoka Nanako, Kyle Buchanan. They need them to be stepping up and scoring. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. So the key is that they have to keep having guys contribute, especially offensively, because I don't think they were terrible defensively. They weren't terrible, goaltending. Vince had a couple of goals that he would definitely want back. But ultimately, what cost them was the offense going dormant, and it was the secondary scoring. It was Kluche, it was Byrne, it was Dane scoring, and that was it, especially in Game 3 and also in Game 2. Game 1, I believe Tehoka had 5, right? That's what was the difference between Game 1, Game 2, and Game 3, was that in Game 1, they had someone that was a secondary scorer that contributed a big number. It doesn't have to be one guy, but they didn't get 5 secondary goals from all their secondary scorers combined in Games 2 and 3. And that's what they need to have. So in order to make it happen, the offense, we know the big guns. We know that they're going to show up. We know that they're going to show out. They need to have balanced scoring throughout. They need to have guys that can score beyond just Dane and Josh.
And now that Tehoka is in his second year, I believe, he's starting to step up this year as well. So we need to find some more secondary guys to step up.
Yeah, he might be pushing himself into one of those primary roles. I mentioned him as a secondary goal scorer, and he's going to shut me up real quick because the way he's been playing, obviously he had a great game, had a great season so far, and then Byrne, 7 goals. He went the sock trick +1. Unreal to have that happen. And you know what? This past weekend's game was an instance where the secondary scoring might not have been there, but Josh Byrne said, "Come on, boys. I got you. We're going." He put the team on his back, and everything he touched turned to gold. He had the Midas last weekend.
Love it. Well, Steve, it was good to catch up with you again. It's good to talk Bandits and lacrosse in general. Thank you for taking time once again, and we will definitely talk before the finals, I would assume.
Of course,
here, but
of course. Assuming I'm in town, but I don't have any travel planned right now, so I should be around.
I think snow should be lighting up in the next few months, maybe. We'll see. But thank you, Steve, once again. Steve Bermel, everybody. Buffalo Bandits analyst, and we'll see you next time, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a fun show. We got to Josh Byrne winning Player of the Week in the NLL. We talked about the By the Metrics by Cooper Perkins. And if Vancouver was really as bad as even I think they are. Also, we talked to Jamie Shewchuk, former Mammoth player and now current Colorado Mammoth analyst, about how defending champions were able to overcome the Game 1 woes, what reached dust for the team, and also the formula for beating the Roughnecks this week. And also, our most recent guest was Steve Bermel, Buffalo Bandits analyst, who was actually at the expense of the Mammoth last year. He gave us some insight into what Buffalo needs to do with those secondary scores. Just keep the foot on the gas. Maybe when we talk to them in a few months, they might be singing different tunes, and who knows who will be defending champions. Regardless, we'll be with you all season long here on the Daily Dive. Once again, appreciate Renee Washington for always holding down the fort here on the show. I'm producer Mike. Today I was Michael Karvelis, but you get it. Tomorrow she will be back, and so will we. Same time, noon Eastern. And don't forget to check out Daily Dive Store. Shop the merchandise while it's still cold. Get yourself a beanie with a matching hoodie. You don't want to miss it. All right, guys. Have a great rest of your day. See you tomorrow.